Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a morning forecast and a fresh trading week and the final week of June as well before we go into the second half of the year. Obviously, we had what we had over the weekend with the US and everything that came with that. So last night, market open, there was quite a few gaps on most of the pairs. And obviously, you can see on the DXY as well, a little gap. But most of these gaps this morning have filled. So to be honest, most of the pairs don't really look much different, even with the gap. Not too much mess going on, and they kind of figured themselves out pretty quickly. So we still have not too much disruption to worry about. They just might need a little bit of extra day to kind of figure themselves out a little bit and find a bit of a base. So not really too much to worry about in terms of all the gaps. The DXY hasn't really moved too far from last week, obviously with it only being Monday, and we did have this little gap in price, but I'm still looking at this being the base. So even though price gapped up, this could just become part of the top, and now we get this move down into the base with this little gap, and price ends up heading long anyway. So I've still got that in the back of my mind as a potential where this is kind of like an impulse correction continuation, and price has just left this little gap early, and now the top's in, and then we're going to get a little move to the downside to complete that base, and then see if we get a push to the upside. So that's all I'm really looking at for the DXY, because we need some bigger moves to come in to give us better direction on, or to start to look for opportunities on some of the dollar pairs, because at the moment it's kind of stuck around this low, which is fine. It just means that we need to be patient and not force any trades on the dollar cross pairs before we've got some kind of message or positioning from the DXY itself. So this is really the area that I'm more focused on, to see if we come down and actually create and hold a base to then look for the upside move, where we could then get some possible sell positions on some of the dollar pairs. But that will link in nicely with euro dollar when I get to that. This short-term sell before the long will make sense when I go through euro dollar. Euro Aussie. So I was looking at the buys and the sells in this area here, because we can see that we wicked two and kind of correctively pulled back, and we had a bit of a 1-2-3 move that was completing at the high. But we have got a lot of momentum to the upside, and we've still got this point above that price could reach up to before it either sells off or it actually just breaks higher, and this becomes a bit of a kind of M-style pattern. So there is still potential for the longs as well in this, which again, like I spoke about last week, goes back to not being fixated on one direction only. And as you can see here, we have got the potential of a bit of a kind of channel heading up to this area anyway, where price could potentially sell off from, rather than this point. So this kind of forecast is in the back of my mind as well, where this is becoming the sort of last leg. There could be an opportunity for us to get long into this high, with the chance that price doesn't necessarily need to stop there. It could just break out to the upside and head back to the highs. So if there is a deliberate structure forming in this area where we'll be playing the impulse correction continuation, it could break out further than this high on the left, and then you're in a great trade that could go for 5, 6, 7%. Now the 15 can be used for just a bit of filter, because we can see some kind of price action starting to build here now from this impulse. So if we get price push up and just develop a little bit more, and we get an obvious structure like this, then there's no reason why we can't look for the risk entry and play that into the highs. As you can see, to the first inflection point, you've got over a 5-1 just in this short move. And then, price doesn't have to stop there. even if it broke out slightly higher and you managed a bit more aggressively, it could become a 6 to 8% trade just playing a simple impulse correction continuation, knowing that price has broken impulsively above this high on the left. So I'm looking for some kind of structure like this. I do want to see a deliberate structure form that's clear as a deliberate message to play that move into the next inflection point. Because right now, if it forms something like that, what how high is the probability that price forms a deliberate structure like this from an impulse and then it just breaks back in? Of course it can do that, but the way that it's broken so strongly and broken above all of this area, if we get a clear structure like this, you can play that into the next inflection point or the next high. So I'm looking for some kind of deliberate structure here that I can start to see forming on the 1 hour at least as a minimum, and then see if we can play that next leg into this sort of area here on the left with the potential it could break out higher. So this can be ready today easily, but it does need to develop that depth within the structure to then start to look to get positioned for the longs. Kind of a similar play with Euro Kiwi. So again, you can see that we've got all of this area here that I was looking at for the sells, but we've also got a 1, 2, 3, and we've got multiple daily candles that are very bullish. So with 3 candles in a row, you're either going to get a complete turnaround or you get that pullback before the next push. So a bit like here, you can see you got 3 bullish candles, pull back, and now it's gone again. So we may get something similar. So, but I'm still open to both directions, knowing that we're only just sat above all of this area here. Price can very easily just break back in, and then suddenly we're looking for the sells. But at the same time, we've impulsively broken above this area, and now we've got all of these points above that we can target for the next leg if it was to break out to the upside. So similar to EURAUD, you can see we've got this first base. And so all I'm looking for is some development on price where we get some kind of structure like this, which is very deliberate. And again, like EURAUD, impulse correction continuation. If we get a deliberate structure like this, we can get positioned with the risk entry for the long and then look to target these areas up here. I mean, you've got this little inflection point here. Obviously, this size structure is very unlikely to give price enough fuel to take it all the way to the main highs, but at least up to these sort of areas here where you can still be looking at a 6, 7 to 1 easily like EURAUD just by taking advantage of a clear message from the market with impulse correction continuation. So this is very similar to EURAUD in what I'm looking for and how price has actually developed. We now just need to see what it gives us next and to make sure we're not getting into any early structures where price ends up breaking back down and then we start to look for the sells. So we need to be aware of that and make sure that these structures we're looking for have actually had enough time to develop a clear enough message before we start to get involved. So Euro Aussie, Euro Kiwi, very similar to each other in terms of I'm leaning more for the longs, but I also won't be surprised if we get a sudden reaction and they just break back down. And then I'm open to looking to also sell those. So kind of neutral, but slightly more on the long side. We'll just have to wait and see how they both develop through today and whether we get that clear message or not. And then euro dollar. So obviously tying this in with what I said about the DXY, potentially finding its base to go long. Obviously euro dollar will be the opposite, where I'm looking for it to find its high to then go short, because we are sat in this area where price has got the potential to sell off from this kind of V-shaped double top, and then we can target the base. The 4 hour, you can see, yeah, this does look like a bit of a corrective leg, but on the lower time frames, you can see the areas that are being hit and actually respected, that price is still making sense for the sells, especially when you correlate it with something like the DXY, which does hold a lot of weight with this pair. So all I'm looking for with this is, obviously we had this large gap in euro dollar that has now filled. Remembering what I said about the DXY, finding its base to slightly push down to then look for the longs, I'm looking for euro dollar to find its top, and then we get the insurance entry from this area, this kind of V shape, where we can then look for the sells and manage to the base of this overall range. So basically the opposite to the DXY, and the DXY moving down to its base will give euro dollar a chance to move up to this high, and then euro dollar sells off, and then the DXY goes long. So although this might not look the prettiest, we have got to take the gap into consideration, that that's now filled. We've not met the lows. We've got this gap here. So price does have a reason to come back down outside of the reasons linked with the DXY. It just might need this little move back up to then look for the insurance entry and manage to this base. And then we start to get the DXY heading to the upside and euro dollar starting to sell off. So this could be an easy pair to write off quick, because you can't really make sense of it. You got the gap. It's not tagged the lows. It's putting back up. You can easily just leave this, but all it needs to do is come back into these highs and get a reaction, and then we can start to look for the sells, because at that point the DXY may have found its base here and then started to go long. So it would all make sense at that point. And then it just comes down to getting positioned within the structure that euro dollar gives us at the time. So they're the three pairs I'm really focusing on today. A couple of the others that have got the gaps need a little bit more time to sort of find their feet. And obviously it is only Monday, so they may need a day to just figure themselves out. But euro dollar, euro kiwi, very similar. Just looking for that deliberate structure to play the next move to the upside. And euro kiwi, we've got that nice base on the 15 that we can use, and literally just looking for some kind of deliberate continuation, and then we can start to get long. So they're the three pairs for today. There may be a little bit more development as we move through Monday and things start to calm down a little bit, and price gets a chance to find its feet and develop. So there may be a couple of pairs that change this afternoon going into this evening. But overall, from everything that happened at the weekend and with the gaps, it still looks absolutely fine. So we'll let these three pairs develop, see what we get, and I'll catch everybody tomorrow morning.